single day.
Welcome to Cities Connect, where we discuss issues that matter. In this episode, we're discussing a practice every government employee needs to be aware of: First Amendment audits. We're joined by 3 First Amendment experts who will explain what these audits are and what city officials need to know to ensure they remain on the right side of the law. Claire Norins is an assistant clinical professor and director of the University of Georgia School of Law's First Amendment Clinic, where she represents clients in federal court on a range of First Amendment and media law issues. In private practice, she specialized in issues of First Amendment, policing, and employment discrimination. Claire previously served as an assistant attorney general for the state of New York and as assistant director of UGA's Equal Opportunity Office. She's also a board member of the Georgia First Amendment Foundation. Colton Carpenter is a student attorney with the University of Georgia School of Law's First Amendment Clinic and serves as a distinguished law fellow at the University of Georgia School of Law. Mackenzie Ferguson also is a student attorney with the University of Georgia School of Law's First Amendment Clinic and a member of UGA's Journal of Intellectual Property Law. We appreciate Ms. Norins, Mr. Carpenter, and Ms. Ferguson for sharing this important information with us, and we hope you enjoy their presentation.
My name is Mackenzie Ferguson, and we are really excited to be able to share this presentation with you today. So we're going to start off talking about what these audits actually are, and then their application and how best to prepare and deal with them. So starting off with what exactly First Amendment audits are. The definition that you see at the screen is from the official First Amendment auditing website. So audits are the practice of exercising one's constitutional right to record video for the purpose of educating anyone who attempts to infringe that right and commending those who respect it. So these auditors record interactions with the public officials and post the videos to the internet as a form of activism. The main purpose of the audit is to make sure that the public employee knows the First Amendment rights and that they are also respecting the rights of the auditor. And most of these auditors post their videos to YouTube. So one of their main purposes is to generate content and more subscribers. So the more controversial, the better for the auditors. However, the main successful audit is one in which the auditor is treated the same as they are without a camera. So the thing that you're going to see kind of throughout the entire presentation is that we really encourage you to be tolerant with the auditor. As long as you make sure that you know your First Amendment rights and that you respect theirs, the audit should be a pass for you. So now we're going to talk about a case called Dunn v. Fort Valley. And in this case, Dunn was an auditor, and he was arrested after taking pictures and recording videos in the public areas of the Fort Valley City Hall. During this audit, he drew the attention of different employees who eventually called the police once Dunn refused to tell them why he was recording. So he brought an action against the police officers and their supervisors, claiming a deprivation of his First Amendment rights and an unlawful arrest under the Fourth Amendment. So during this case, we got a really nice quote from U.S. District Court Judge Tillman Tripp Self. The First Amendment protects the right to gather information about what public officials do on public property, and specifically a right to record matters of public interest. Pretty simple rule. So this quote nicely summarizes the First Amendment protection in auditing and also states the Middle District of Georgia's opinion on the rule itself, stating that it's a pretty simple rule to follow if you know your First Amendment rights. So we've additionally seen a lot of courts recognize this constitutional right to record government officials who are engaged in their duties in a public place. So the First Amendment does include the right to record video and audio for both regular citizens and for journalists. So the 11th Circuit in the Smith v. City of Cumming case, the 11th Circuit is the federal court circuit that includes Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. They responded to this in the Smith v. City of Cumming, where the plaintiff brought an action against the city and its police chief after being prevented from videotaping the police actions. He claimed a violation of his First Amendment rights, and we get this nice quote from the case as well. The First Amendment protects the right to gather information about what public officials do on public property, and specifically a right to record matters of public interest. So these cases kind of set up our legal precedent around the right to First Amendment audits. So now we have some really great videos to show you. We're going to show you a video of an audit that failed or went really badly, and then we're going to show you a video of an audit that went well. So this first video is from the Union County Sheriff's Office, and after the video is played, I'm going to ask for your participation in the chat just to type what you think went wrong, and we'll discuss that. Go ahead and play the video, Colton.
I hope it will. What do you mean? Can you can you get me a can you get me a
right now, back over here.
Can you get me a supervisor?
Back over here.
Can you get me a supervisor?
Back over here.
What's your name and badge number, ma'am?
Here. Please
Please
go,
don't touch
or
me,
you're
ma'am.
fixing to be arrested.
Okay, well, let me call my attorney.
Go ahead.
Let me call my attorney. I'm just getting my hands out of.
Personal vehicles, don't go over there.
Let me call my attorney.
Go back over here.
What's your name and badge number? Or a supervisor, please. This is public property. This is public property, and now you have made a mistake. Can I get a supervisor out here, please, sir? I want a supervisor. Ma'am, that is not a restricted area. That is public property. Please, can I get a supervisor out here, please? So, I thought everything was good, and then we had a tyrant come out and started barking orders and yelling orders. So now we're going to have a problem, seems like. So we're gonna have a problem. How you doing, ma'am? Get a supervisor, please. All right, so that parking lot right there, where those public cars are, that's public property. There's no restricted areas or anything out there. That lady came out barking orders at me, yelling and screaming, telling me to get back over here. So I want her name and badge number to file a formal complaint.
You ain't got a badge number.
Well, I like her name to file a complaint.
Okay. You'll have to talk to the chief when he gets back Monday.
Monday? So you can't tell me her name now so I can file a complaint while I'm here?
Her name's Jenny. She's the secretary.
Okay. You understand that that's a, okay.
I'm talking to her, okay?
Please talk to her, because I'm going to go right back over there and film in a public area.
I know. I didn't bother you when I
No, you didn't, but she barked orders and yelled and screamed.
And I'm dealing with that.
Thank you. So we'll file a formal complaint on Jenny, the secretary. And we're going to go right back over here in this public accessible parking lot. That was the lady that's been peeping out the door and out the window. And then I came over here to this lot where I hadn't even thought about getting anybody's personal vehicles on the video. But now I think I will, because she was completely out of order, yelled and screamed at me, telling me to get back over there. I did walk back over there for the fact that I wanted to see where she was actually leading me to. She led me back over there to the guys that did not originally say anything to me when I walked over there. And come to find out, she doesn't even have a badge number or anything like that, but her name is Jenny. She's a secretary, supposedly. And now we are going to stay here until I get dang on ready to leave, because I was actually going to head out until she came out barking orders and screaming at someone.
Okay, thank you, Colton. So now I'm going to give you a couple minutes if you want to click the chat button at the bottom and just type in anything that you recognize that did not go well during this audit. And as they come in, I'll kind of respond and we can talk about the things that went poorly in this First Amendment audit. So I'll give you a couple seconds to do that, please. Okay, we got one that says, I think she escalated the issue by yelling. You're completely right. She automatically came in controversial, confrontational response. That's another one. Great. When she approached the auditor, she was very aggressive, didn't listen to what he was doing. She should have politely asked him a question and realized what his rights were. Absolutely. She didn't identify herself. One of the things you will see during this presentation is that you do not have to answer their questions, but if you do, it leads to an easier response between you and the auditor. And it's very aggressive, didn't speak or interfere, didn't ask him a question. Yeah, so you all did really well. Thanks for participating today. So this audit was just extremely controversial. They showed up very aggressive. She didn't help him out at all, didn't understand the First Amendment rights, refused to give her name. And then there was also a confrontational with the supervisor. And we see here that since this was such a confrontational, aggressive interaction, he decided to go back and do something that he wasn't going to do, which is film some of the private plates. So, which is also in his First Amendment right. So we can see how this one escalated very quick. So now I'm going to show you an example of a good audit. This one is really nice. And we're going to go ahead towards the spot in the video where they directly interact with the police officers. And then once again, after this, we can type in the chat and kind of talk about what went really well in this audit.
Oh, that's pretty. That's kind of cool. And here, those wearing cowboy hats here. That's kind of neat. How are you? This is more up to date. I like that. That's probably 2000s, judging by the hairdo. How are you, sir?
How are you?
Hey, what year you think that is right there? What year you think that is?
I don't know.
I would say guess 2000 due to her hair.
Probably earlier than that, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that's late
90s?
late 90s, I believe.
Okay. Cool. What was your name badge number, sir?
Brooks, number 42.
Okay, you've been very, very professional. Hey, how would I get an officer complaint form? Does that go through here?
I can give her one.
Readily available. Look at that. I do like that.
You doing all right today?
Yes, ma'am. Just wandering around, looking around.
Yes, sir.
They said there was another complex on 441, like an annex building for the courthouse.
Hold on just a second.
Oh, no problem. I got the your scribe up there.
How you doing?
Hey, that's how you?
How you doing? They got you covered?
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. Appreciate it. And you work here too?
Yes, sir. I'm Major Warrior on patrol.
Oh, cool, man. Appreciate it. Y'all be.
What he was inquiring about, he was just asking what year was that picture, and I told him I didn't know.
I was going by her hair, and I said 2000, and he said maybe a little bit older.
This one is probably, oh hell, probably 90s.
Okay. You in there?
Oh no, that's way before
Wait for
my
your time.
She's still here. There's a few of them that are still here.
Oh, wow.
And that's our current chief that's up there now.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that's probably 90s, early 90s.
How about that?
So,
And this is older. I imagine this is 50s and
yeah,
60s.
these are way older. These are way older.
That is really cool.
So,
Well, cool, man. Made you see you look good. I appreciate you
yeah,
so much.
They get you taken care of them?
Yes, sir. That's all I needed, man.
All right,
Thank you so
have a
much.
good day.
You too,
If you
man.
need something from
All
me.
right. And that's the Milledgeville, Georgia police station. Sorry for the shorty, but I'm gonna tell you, that's what you want. Less than a minute. Milledgeville Police Department Citizen Complaint Form. Bam. And there ain't no statute. Ain't no something to scare you away and say if you know if it ain't right, you go into jail. I've seen a lot of that on there. But we're gonna go check out a couple more places in here, and I just want to kind of show you around, see what we can find. And I appreciate you watching. And from Milledgeville, Georgia, that's gonna be your Public Safety Annex building. Good job, guys. Thank y'all.
Okay, thanks, Colton. So I'm going to ask you once again to type in the chat what you think went well. And while y'all are doing that, I wanted to address one of the comments that I didn't see before this video started. But there was a comment about how YouTube auditors try to upload footage that makes the public look bad, and it could be possible that they had talked prior to the start of the video to the woman. So as having watched the entire video, there was no prior interactions before the secretary started to approach the auditor. And most of the time, they upload these full YouTube videos that you can check out. And I do acknowledge that auditors may edit videos to be unflattering to the public officials. So being aware of that is important, and just trying to be polite throughout the entire interaction so that they can't pick out a bad snippet of you is going to be very important as well. So moving on to this lovely video that we just saw, people are saying the staff were polite and helpful. Everyone was courteous, helpful, no threats, professional, engagement. So I think overall, we really see how this is a lot better of an interaction with the auditor. None of the people acknowledged that he had a camera. There was no interaction about, why do you have a camera? What are you doing? It was clear that the people knew the First Amendment audits and the rights surrounding that. Continued business as usual, which is great. Additionally, we saw that when they were asked for their name, the police officers gave it, which is not something that you were required to do, but I think it just made this interaction a lot more nice and respectful. And then even when he asked for a complaint form, he was handed it with no questions or interactions between them. So yes, this is a great example of a really lovely audit. And these YouTube videos, which we can share out with everybody, this is somebody who constantly goes around Georgia. He has a lot of videos directed towards Georgia, and he is a very nice guy if you treat him with respect. So, and then we are now going to move on to who exactly auditors can film. So there is a difference between filming public employees and filming members who are just in the general public space. So the First Amendment right to record does recognize that you can film public employees in public spaces. This can include singling out these public employees. As you saw in the last video, he pointed the camera to the secretary behind. He also pointed it at the police officers, asked them questions, had direct interaction with them, which is completely allowed since you are the public employee in your official duty. There's a difference when it comes to the general public. I do want to emphasize, though, if they are just generally panning around the room, generally recording interactions, you know, if there had been somebody standing at that desk talking to the secretary beforehand, these are all things that the auditor is allowed to film, since private citizens do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in a public place. However, if they are directly singling out individual members of the public, this can look like something like walking up directly to somebody who is just in that police station, putting the camera in their face and asking them a bunch of really intrusive questions, right? If the public member consents to that, of course it's okay. But if they don't, then that is when you can step in and say, please focus on filming only the public employees, as we are the official people engaged in our duty. So I just wanted to make sure that distinction is very clear, that while members of the public do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in public spaces, if they are individually singled out and in a really intrusive way, that is something that you can go in and interact with. You can also choose to not interact, right? So if we go back to this bad recording, that we saw in the first video, if she had not approached him, if she had let him continue filming, then that wouldn't have generated any type of controversial filming as well. So you always have the option to not do anything, right? But if you do see that somebody in public is feeling very uncomfortable because they are being singled out by the auditor, you can step in that situation. And I think there's some questions, so we will definitely answer those at the end. And I will go ahead and answer this one. Is there any limit on filming children who might be in an office with an adult? No, if the child is in a public space, then if they are generally recording in an audit, the child can be filmed. If you see the auditor going up with their camera and pointing it in the face of the child and focusing only on the child, that is something that you can ask them to redirect their camera to the public employee.
Great. So aside from who auditors can film, you probably have asked yourself, where can they film? So we've said that auditors have a right to film public employees, but common sense tells us that surely they don't have the right to film public employees in like their private offices or in the bathroom. Well, common sense is correct on this one. There is a difference in the right to record public officials performing their public duties and recording public officials in private spaces. When you're working at, say, a reception desk, auditors have every right to come and record you because you're in a public space. Auditors have a right to be in that public space and to record basically whatever they can see from that public space. However, under Georgia Code 161162, auditors do not have a right to record anybody in a private space. So private spaces may include, say, employee break rooms, personal offices, or restrooms. And a really easy way to clarify what is and what is not a private or employees only area is through proper posting of signage. Signs that can designate an area as reserved or employees only, and they serve as a nice aid if an auditor ever insists on going into a reserved or an employees only area. Now, I just mentioned how signage can help to distinguish employee versus public areas, and the same signage strategy is particularly useful for any kind of reserved area that the general public isn't supposed to have access to. Another sign that you may post in preparation for this that could be useful is guidelines for filming in public spaces. Posting this affirms that you understand that there's a First Amendment right to record, but you also understand that there are limits to recording in public spaces only. Now, along with proper signage, designating who may talk to an auditor if needed can also help make the process go smoother. You should, of course, talk to the auditor in your normal course of duties if they're just asking general questions that you would answer if any other patron came up and asked them. However, if there is a problem, having somebody who has excellent customer service and people skills to be able to step in and help out can just help it go smoother. If you noticed in the second video we showed, there was that gentleman in the light blue shirt that stepped out and talked to the auditor. He was extremely friendly, very helpful, and there's a good possibility that he was the person they had designated to come and talk to the auditor. Also, make sure you know the open records laws. Auditors often ask for public records, therefore it's really important to know these laws. If you're not familiar with open records, you can always reference the red or the blue books that you can see down here in the corner of the slide. The blue book, it's a reference for open records for law enforcement officers, and the red book is open records for government meetings. Both of these are published by the Georgia First Amendment Foundation, and they're both online and they're completely free. And it's fairly common for First Amendment auditors to make open records requests as a sort of test to see if the public officials really know their stuff. So being informed on the policies behind these requests and making sure that all of your employees that are potentially dealing with auditors know these policies can really help make it go smoother. Because that really is the point, is to make this go as smooth as possible. Let's talk about a few ways that you can respond once the auditors are actually there at the office. So number one, and this is by far the most important, just continue business as usual. An auditor really is just another kind of patron, and everybody shouldn't be scrambling or panicking or shuffling and hiding stuff. They're another kind of patron, and you should continue business as usual as if they were just another person. Second, don't try to dissuade their recording or threaten them with citations or arrests. These threats are exactly what drives the high view counts for auditors online, and these threats infringe on the auditor's constitutional rights. And the last thing that any of us want is to be that official on YouTube threatening to call the police on some guy who's just recording what he's constitutionally allowed to record. Now, third, you can also recognize the auditor's right to record as long as they're in a public space. So just saying, yes, I understand you have a right to record in this public space, as long as they're not singling out or harassing other patrons that are around. Recognizing that right can also go a long way to making it a smooth interaction because the auditor will understand that you know their constitutional rights. And finally, make sure that you train the employees to be knowledgeable about open records requests and be able to respond to them efficiently. Again, this is a pretty common strategy by auditors is to come and make open records requests. So just being able to respond without having to go and look up what the policy for these requests are can just make it go faster.
So now we're going to get into some examples in responding, but I would like to first comment on the comment that was posted to the chat about people who disguise themselves as member of the press. So I think just in general, it's a great approach to treat auditors and press the same, especially since the First Amendment right to record applies to regular citizens as much as it does journalists. And maybe some of these examples will help you with some of the hypotheticals you've been thinking about as well. So the first example, while filming inside City Hall, an auditor tries to enter a restricted area that is for employees only. So how would you respond to this? Feel free to go ahead in the chat box below and type in just like you did for the videos. And as they come in, we can kind of talk about this hypothetical. Okay, so we have one, politely inform them that they cannot enter the restricted area, ask that they're looking for anything in particular. Absolutely, that's the best thing to do, is to talk to the auditor, let them know that you are aware of the First Amendment right to record, and also ask them to please stick to areas that are public. So this one that we just had about asking them to remove themselves and explain why. Absolutely, you can ask them to remove themselves from the restricted area. I think it would be great to acknowledge that all the areas that are public, you are more than welcome to film in and encourage that. We want to be as tolerant and respectful to the auditor as we can, but making sure that they don't enter really restricted private areas is also something that you are definitely allowed to do. So like I said, acknowledging the right to record is always helpful. And one thing I really want to emphasize here is that whatever an auditor can see from a public area is fair to film. So for example, if on your desk, like the secretary's desk, you have documents that are out and open in the public, they are allowed to film those. They are in the public. So what we recommend is if there's any confidential documents or things that you do not want recorded by the auditor, to place it below the desk or somewhere that is private that the auditor cannot see. And as we mentioned several times, signs designated employee only areas from those open to the public is a great way to be able to do this and point to the auditor. This is one of the restricted private areas, but we more than welcome you to exercise your First Amendment right to record in any of the public areas. So our next example, an auditor approaches an individual and asks them why they are there and ask what they are doing. You can tell that this individual is extremely uncomfortable. How would you respond to this situation? I'll give you a couple of seconds to type a response in the chat. If we're trying to think about this and you might be a little bit stuck on this one, I think it's important to think about the difference that I mentioned earlier between filming public officials and filming private individuals. Maybe that will help a little bit. Ask if you can help with anything. Absolutely, right? Coming up to them, continuing business as usual, if they need anything as you, the public employee, is a great way to redirect the auditor to filming only the public officials. Colton, if you would like to post the responses. So here, making sure that they know that the right to record only applies to these public officials, right? And to focus on filming the officials only, since they are the ones who are engaged in their official duties. And then, like I mentioned earlier, intrusively questioning individual patrons is not protected by the First Amendment. So going up to the auditor, telling them that they should please focus on the public officials, and kind of letting the individual know what's happening is also a great way to respond to this. So our final example here, and the last thing you have to participate in, I promise, you notice that the auditor is in the police station parking lot filming police and private vehicles, including license plates. How should you respond? And a great thing to think about here is that first example of the bad audit that we saw. And I'll wait for some responses in the chat. So the person says, allow them to film and let them approach you if you have questions. That's a perfect response, right? Like I said earlier, not doing anything is sometimes one of the best responses, right? They definitely are allowed to film in areas that are open to the public, especially if this parking lot is not fenced off or says employees only. So not doing anything is a great response here. It won't lead to any type of confrontational thing. Respecting their right to record is important to these auditors. It'll also help you to pass this audit. And one of the ones that I want to mention, somebody says let them film, but ask what they are doing. If they can record public plates, but there may be private vehicles in the lot. So they are allowed to film private vehicles. That is something that we see a lot in these interactions when things get intrusive, because some people don't understand that. Filming private vehicles is something that they are allowed to do. So it'd be best just to tolerate and respect them. And you can always ask if they need help with anything. That would also be a great way to kind of see exactly what they might be looking for.
Okay, so after looking at all those examples, you're ready for the First Amendment auditor. But what do you do after you've successfully implemented all this advice today? So after a First Amendment auditor comes through, we recommend that you debrief it with everybody who is involved. Talk over what went well during that audit and talk over what could be improved upon. Afterwards, it's also important to not make a report if the auditor was acting within their legal rights. Now, if there was a real issue, such as, say, the auditor coming into a private space after being told to stop, then you may want to make a report. But you should always be cautious making these reports, because if the auditor was only filming in public spaces and filming within their constitutional rights, then making a report against them is a form of retaliation, and it could chill their First Amendment rights. And we definitely don't want to do that. So to emphasize this, I want to talk about a couple examples of when First Amendment audits have gone wrong and exactly what the stakes are that we're looking at here. So we have a few examples here of how not to handle auditors videoing public officials. A few of these cases are particularly relevant. And so you see the on the third row down, Cop Watch Atlanta. So this is a case that happened in 2011. It involved a citizen who was videoing an arrest by police, and the police told him that he was not permitted to record them, despite all the parties involved being in a public space. The police ultimately confiscated the recorder's phone, which he was recording on, and when this case settled out of court, the Atlanta Police Department paid out a $40,000 settlement to the recorder. And this is on the low end of the settlements that get paid out for some of these cases. The second case, which Mackenzie mentioned at the beginning, Dunn v. Fort Valley, which is a little more than halfway down here. This is a case where a citizen who was a First Amendment auditor was trying to record the lobby of a city hall when he was reported by the staff as a suspicious person. Law enforcement was called, and they told Dunn that he could not record anything in the lobby. The situation was escalated, and ultimately this auditor was arrested. His camera was confiscated. He was cited twice for criminal trespass, and he was barred from entering the city hall further. So the city government then refused to reply to all of this auditor's open records requests that he made. Essentially, everything we've been talking about today about what to do, the opposite happened in this case. The law enforcement was the main point of contact. An arrest was made. Retaliatory charges were brought. Open records requests were ignored. And this settled strongly in favor of the auditor. And that was a $100,000 settlement in favor of the auditor. The same auditor, just below the second Dunn case, was also recording in Marshallville. He was recording in a public space, and similarly, this reached another settlement with the city, and this settlement was for $95,000. So just from these two instances of public officials mishandling auditors in some way, they paid out almost $200,000 in settlements. So improper handling of these audits can lead to really substantial payouts. So it's critical to implement the steps and strategies that we've discussed today to try to minimize that liability. Thank you. All right, does anybody have any questions for me or Mackenzie?
You have the right to record, so you could definitely do that. But I think that would just escalate the situation even more. If it was up to me, I would probably just respect the auditor's right to record, right? They wouldn't get any type of video of you filming them and any type of bad interaction that might happen between that. And then additionally, you just letting them know that you know your First Amendment rights and that you respect theirs and let them film.
So anyone can be an auditor. You know, anybody who exercises their right to record in a public place and record public officials could be deemed an auditor, whether they assign that title to themselves or not. And I think the point about, aren't they trying to set you up? Some of them are. And so that's why we think it's the best approach to, you know, really be as respectful and tolerant as possible, and not rise to their bait, in other words. Because some of them are looking to maybe get a settlement out of it. Some of them are looking just to up their viewers on YouTube. So, you know, you can just kind of rise above that, let them go about their business as long as they're not invading private spaces or harassing individual patrons. And it'll be over faster and without incident for you, hopefully.
A lot of these auditors, just looking at some of their YouTube channels and the stuff they post, they're not trying to set anybody up. They really believe in what they're doing. And the big benefit they're getting is YouTube views. So of course they're looking for these controversial kind of confrontational things, but they're not looking for big settlements. They're looking for YouTube views.
I would say if the meeting is open to the public, if it's not a closed door meeting, then absolutely they are allowed to film in there. But if this is a private meeting and there are no public officials doing their official duties, then that would not be something that they'd be allowed to film.